Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. WeatherBrains episode number 899. Yes, indeed, it's the pre-show, the marvelous, amazing part of this program where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and occasionally we say really, really, really outrageous things. So maybe we'll do that tonight. All right, this is for the 10th of April, 2023, 899.
Closing
Bill
in
Murray's
on 900.
900. For
Closing in
show
on
1000, we got to go live somewhere. We've got to be live somewhere, centrally located together as a family.
Did we determine it was on St. Patty's Day or something?
One of the listeners figured it out. But yeah, we need to
That'll be a throwdown, won't it?
Where are we going? I think we ought to bring back some of the great legends of the show in years past.
I just talked to our friend David Black yesterday.
I saw him in Fairhope a couple of weeks ago.
For your book signing. Yeah. I was down there too last Monday night. That's why I missed the show last week.
David looks good. David doesn't age. He looks no different now than he did 40 years ago. It's very disturbing.
He found the fountain of youth.
All right, let me get this embed code here so we can get on the television.
I hope our guest shows up.
Well, that's part of the fun of the show. I mean, you never know. I mean, it's just part of the experience.
Yesterday, so maybe so.
All right. I think I'm good. I haven't done something, but we'll figure it out once we get there. I know that James A. is coming on the show, and Jen is going to be on the show. Hopefully, Troy will be on. We know that Neil is out, and Rick is out, and Kim will probably be out. But hopefully, everybody else will be on the shoe. Yeah, David Black did the very first, the first year of the show, and it was very well produced. I mean, he put a lot into it. The first show, for those that don't know, on WeatherBrains was the 31st of January, 2006. And it was a 30-minute, very well-produced show that David would take, snippets and edit that into the top of the show. It sounded like a commercial radio kind of thing. Now it's just it's a free for all.
Yeah, he'd call an Eskimo at in the Yukon or something, and talk to him about something that happened. We got a lot lazier since then.
Yeah. Man, I just had an apple turnover from Arby's. That thing was amazingly good. I've not had one of those in a long time, but it was my struggle every Monday night. Do I run to the Arby's next door here? We have an Arby's right by the TV station and try and eat something quickly, or do I wait until the end of the show? And around here, a lot of the places kind of close up at that hour. So, if I do that, I'll eat after the 10 o'clock news. But I just thought I'd go to Arby's. I just was in the mood. They've got this, they've got all kind of new sandwiches down there. But anyway, the apple turnover was just excellent. It surpassed all expectations. Jen, have you ever had an apple turnover from Arby's?
I have not, but I love Arby's.
We have the meats.
Yeah,
we have the meats.
That's right. It's good.
But we're kind of excited because here at our little interstate exit, there's basically one fast food restaurant, and that Arby's is great. They have saved our life. I love having it there. It's great, but it's nice having a variety. So they tore down a big gas station over there, a Shell gas station, and they're building something, and we don't know what it's going to be. Whatever. I just hope they've got Hunt Brothers Pizza. If it's a gas station, give me some Hunt Brothers Pizza. That would make me really happy. I mean, go over there and get a hot dog, Hunt Brothers Pizza, get the Arby's. Life would be really good.
I've never had Hunt Brothers Pizza.
What?
I haven't either, Jen, and there's plenty of opportunities. I need to work
on
that. I'll work on that tomorrow.
Gosh.
Tomorrow.
Yeah,
you guys have not lived until you've dined in a gas station or gotten a Hunt Brothers Pizza.
That's my promise for tomorrow. I am eating at Hunt Brothers Pizza.
Now,
And
have you guys ever been to Sheetz restaurant or gas station up here? I love Sheetz.
Oh yeah,
they have great food. So I'm all about the Sheetz, and we are getting one here in my town. So I'm very excited.
yeah. I
is that,
rolled
is that like is that like a Buc-ee's?
Yeah, they have
almost. Yeah, not quite as big, but
yeah,
close.
they have a full menu of stuff, and you can.
I rolled in there one night. It was just beginning to snow. I rolled into Haymarket on an early Monday morning, trying to beat a big snowstorm last winter, and it snowed about 12 or 13 inches the next morning. But I rolled in there about 1:15, and I cleaned out the sheets and carried it with me to my hotel, so I wouldn't be destitute for the next 3 days. And they have Tesla superchargers. I had never driven a Tesla till we went on vacation. Boy, that was interesting. It was kind of fun.
Well, maybe we need to have the show 1,000 at one of these joints. I mean,
they'd throw us out so fast it'd make your head swim.
Oh, come on. Well, that's not a gas station. That's a resort or something. I mean, a gas station would welcome us to come in and do the show.
Just imagine Buc-ee's on about a 1/4 scale. That's what a sheet is.
And welcome to our television viewers. We're at the top of the hour. We are without a guest, but if we're without a guest, by golly, we'll just become the guests. We will interrogate each other.
It made me great into name calling and making fun of each other. James has James Adelot has an unfair advantage.
Yeah, he really does.
He does.
So did you see where Elon Musk changed his name on the tweeter today?
Oh my!
Oh no, I missed.
I saw he built a plant in China.
He changed his name on his Twitter profile. I don't know if I should say this. Well, it's the pre-show. We can say things that are obnoxious here. He changed it to Harry Balls. And no, I'm not kidding. Go to his Twitter profile, and he's changed it back for about 6 hours. That was his name today, and to this moment,
maybe he didn't know that it happened.
Somebody probably got a little testy about that.
Oh gosh!
There.
Troy, hurry, come and save us.
This show is totally down the tubes. Wow. And you know what's so bad? We are on television. I waited until we went on, but look, that's all over the news. That's what people are talking about. So it's not just me. It was a legitimate news story. So yeah, you never know what you're going to get over there. So let's just start. And if nobody shows up, then that's okay.
Help. You're beyond.
Yeah, we really are. We really are. All right, here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Join the American Meteorological Society by becoming a member of the band. The AMS Weather Band is a global community of weather enthusiasts dedicated to learning and sharing their love of science. Visit amsweatherband.org to learn more and join the band today.
WeatherBrains, episode number 899. We are 1 week away from 900. Yes, this is for the 10th of April, 2023. A couple of weeks ago, I saw some of the weather tweeter people, these kids. By the time we get to the middle of April, it's going to be the most historic tornado month of all time. You won't believe what will be happening. And of course, it's dead, totally dead. I mean, and I think these are mostly teenagers that just get carried away and they don't mean anything by it. But, so anyway, the weather is actually, considering the fact this is the 10th of April, amazingly quiet. Jen, who is it? You're responsible for, I'm trying to figure out who started the stability here.
Yeah, I think it was me, and I'm fine with that. It's been just great. We needed a break. Everyone across the country needed a break. I mean, of course, we have some more active little areas here, but in regards to severe weather, it was relentless for 3 weeks. And I just kept thinking about all these poor folks that had to keep dealing with this, storm after storm coming up, into their area, and they're having to deal with that. And it's just been really great to have a break from it. Yep.
James ate a lot, has his headphones on because they're doing something in the studio, but things have gotten calm in Oklahoma. Even in Oklahoma, I say it's calm. I take it back. There's some storms, but it's not as bad as it has been.
No, not at all. It's a weird pattern. We've got a severe storm that's dropped 2-inch hail west of Oklahoma City, but it's moving from northeast to southwest. Yep. And that just does not happen in April in Oklahoma. So
Wow.
but it's moving away from my area, and so I'll take it.
So if it keeps on going all the way, it's going to wind up down in Troy's territory down there. If it keeps moving southwest.
But both Jameses. I'm sitting here watching a cell north of Junction. It's moving southwest, and also around Kerrville, Texas. A couple of thunderstorms. They're non-severe, but they're out there. And going back to what James said a few seconds ago, James, I'm not sure it's just the kids that are on the tweeter that are doing the stuff that tends to be sensational. There's some adults that do the same thing.
There's still a debate today about the Mayfield tornado and somebody stirring that up again. Like, come on, man. What difference does it make?
Yeah, let the Weather Service do the damage assessments and don't bug them and get the job. I don't know. I'm leaning toward dropping the tweeter as well. I'm just about tired of it all.
What's the new one? Nostril? Nostrus? What's the new one?
There's a new one past that thing you had had a
nostril. Yes, stuff I'm using for my nose. Yeah.
Now, normally I try and I'm an early adopter, but I'm so busy. But there's a new one that everybody's talking about. It's Nostrus, not Nostra.
Not
nostril.
The earliest adopter I ever met.
I just try and get my name. I want to get my name on these things, and 99% of them don't stick. But everybody, this one's going to stick. This is different. This is the one you want to be on, nostril or nostril.
Well, I don't. There are a lot of things out there, James, but I don't necessarily want to have my name associated with them.
That's true.
I'm not sure whether to give them a bad name or me a bad name, but whatever.
I was on Mastodon in 2016 or something, but and then of course when Elon Musk came in, everybody, I'm going to Mastodon. I'm going to be tooting and not tweeting. And people they get over there. They get over there for a few weeks, and they don't like the action. They're right back on the tweeters. So it's But here's a pro tip: if you get on the tweeter, you don't have to fight and criticize people all day. You can actually be encouraging, and you can share good information, and you can be of value to mankind. It's just you don't have to.
I don't think that's in the terms of service.
No, I don't think so.
What is that?
but everybody, I mean, what a big week this has been. The end of last week. I don't know where it stands today, but apparently Twitter decided to get rid of some of the notifications. You can't, that's the way severe weather works. You can't issue more than 13 warnings. That'd be my rule. But bottom line is, now Weather Service offices have their hands tied. They invested in the tweeter, and now Elon's cut that back. Thanks, Elon. Across town over there.
That's not his new name. You need to use his new name.
I'm sorry.
Harry.
You just call him Harry.
Harry. Did they? I have a question on that. Did they limit it, or did they turn off? Like, I know for Daryl Hertzman, right? Did that get completely turned off, or was it?
Well, what it was, I think, was just numbers. Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, or James, either James. I think they said you couldn't have an auto tweet the way it was set up. And the good example is the Weather Service. When they have them automatically going over
tornado and severe thunderstorm warning.
Yeah. And after 13, no more that day, what I understand.
Well, we've got one that Brian Peters operates, our friend Brian Peters. I don't think they've limited it's called eWarn. That's the name of the Twitter account. It's just eWarn. And I don't think he's been shut down, and he cranks. I mean, it's automated. There's not a soul involved. It's
you didn't hear that, Elon.
Yeah, that's right.
Harry's already working on the case over there.
He uses weather message software, but you don't know what you're going to. And like the other thing, he said he's going to shut down these blue checks. They're all going away on April 1st. Well, I looked, and I've still got mine as of tonight, as of this minute. I mean, so it didn't go away April 1st. Yeah, and I'm sure it'll be gone after the show here, but like most of us here, I don't think anybody's going to. Well, or maybe somebody has. Anybody paid the $8 a month or whatever this thing is? I mean, it's not happening with me. I just don't have any interest in it, and so. But I've still, as of this minute, I've still got a blue check. So welcome to Social Media Brains. So let's introduce Bill Murray. Bill has been on a bender for a few weeks.
He has
a pub crawl.
Well, I tried all day to figure out how to put a Hooters as my background on Zoom, but I never could quite figure it out.
Oh,
so
man.
I'll work on that for next week. But no, we were
or the booby trap. One of the two.
Well, you'd have to go there and take a picture of it, though.
Okay. I'm sure
but-
James Spann has one.
Yeah.
we were on vacation 3 weeks ago in Sarasota, which was a lot of fun. We went to Anna Maria Island and just happened to be there during the big Sarasota Film Festival. So we had a really good time. And then 2 weeks ago, I had a big hotel project I had to work on. And then last week, I had to be at the place that I was working on that hotel project for. So I'm glad to be back. But I hate that our guest has sort of ghosted us tonight. I was really
Bill?
looking forward to it, but it'd be a good night for us to talk amongst ourselves.
Well,
is who
I
was
was
supposed
gonna mention to you, Bill. Did you see? And I thought it was very good. And I thought, I wonder if Bill has something to do with this. But it wasn't a tweet with your name on it or anything. But you see the tweet in the last week from the guy checking into a hotel in a tornado watch? Big poster out front on an eye on a board telling the tornado watch what you listen for, and it's great thing in the hotel lobby.
That's really good. You want to see more examples of that because we do strive to do that. We have a handout that we give because people don't know what county they're in or what TV channels are going to broadcast the warnings, and that's what we try to do.
Well, that's Bill. I think this is what this showed. If I'm not mistaken, that poster said, "Here is the county you're in." It's sort of a map up there, and so
I gotta look that up.
Yeah, it was a tweet. I apologize. I'll see if I can find it and send it to you.
Yeah, that's exciting because I think we have a responsibility in hospitality to, protect our guests. We had that young lady on that was at the Hampton Inn in Fultondale when the tornado hit out there. What was that? January 2022, and she did a really good job, that night for her guests. She was paying attention, watching television. I thought that tornado, Troy, you probably were paying attention. Sunday a week ago, I look up and that darn tornado is going right for Buffalo, Texas, which is one of our locations. And I had about 25 minutes of lead time. So I called the hotel. Luckily, the general manager was there. And I just said, this thing's going to hit you. And she said, it's clear blue skies. And I said, I'm telling you,
it moved right over Buffalo.
Look to the west. And so she took photographs all the way from a gnarly wall cloud rotating, and it passed about a half mile to the northwest of the hotel.
Well, Bill, that on that day, if you noticed on radar, those storms are very isolated, and thus they wound up real quickly, and so forth. But everything that day, every one of those three cells that were in the southern part of North Texas were rotating. They were just sitting there spinning like tops. So, yeah,
I just knew this was going to be that day that, one of ours got hit. It's like Selma, when Selma happened, I called the director of operations about an hour, 15 minutes ahead. And I said, this thing's going to hit Selma. And, so they had both hotels on alert, and, the GM was watching out the back for me. And I mean, it passed within a couple hundred yards of the back of the two hotels.
Oh.
So we just keep getting really, really lucky. And I don't, just kind of worries me that luck's going to run out at some point.
Yeah, but Bill, you've been a leader in that. You pushed that. And so that's something you should be quite proud of, because I'm glad to see that.
But, go ahead.
I'm sorry, y'all finish. I was going
to say, the day, the April 27th, that morning, I had all these Hilton people at the Hampton Inn in the Colonnade, James, which you know where that is, on 459 on the south side of Birmingham. And I called the hotel about 4:00 and said, you're going to go into tornado plan here in about 30 minutes. And all these people are going to have to get up. And sure enough, James, that little tornado that came through Cahaba Heights passed within a couple of hundred yards of that hotel. And I called them as soon as the tornado went through. And I said, y'all need to get in your cars, your planes, whatever you got, and go back home quick, because it's going to be a very, very bad night and bad afternoon. And they did. And boy, that was some thankful Hilton people, because, it was a terrible day here, of course.
All right.
Sorry, James,
so we're gonna jump into something that I hope will be useful for our audience. And we're just doing this on the fly. So I don't know if you guys have seen this research. And for those that are not watching, I'm showing a slide, and Tim Heller, I think, kind of presented this. Our friend Tim, that used to do television weather in Houston, And this is how people get their weather. And this is based on research from almost a year ago. And understand, time, as we all know, this business is changing like a meteor streaking through the night. But the preferred source for non-severe weather, just your daily weather. You want to know what the weather's going to do? What do you do? And I think we all know this has been the case for years and years and years. They go to their app. And this is research from the weather company, IBM. The mobile app is number one at 51%. Number two is local television at 24%. And then a website and social media, that's almost tied at 12, 13%. I get the idea social media would be much higher if they were to do that today. But the other thing I wanted to show was this. This is the preferred source for severe weather. And for the first time ever, the mobile app beats local television. Now, in our defense, I think most people are opening up the mobile app to watch the live coverage. So in a way, that's a little misleading. But mobile app, local television, almost at a dead tie, followed by website and social media. So I wanted to just, while we've got this opportunity to do this, and I get this over and over and over and over. Hey, man, what weather app should I use? All right. So, and obviously in a mobile world with people using their phones, I want everybody on the show to go around the horn and suggest, and because I'm telling you, if there's any question I get, it's this over and over and over and over. So let's just throw out some ideas or tell us what's on your phone, Troy. Go.
But James, here it just blows me away. And I'm going to sit here and be about this for just a second. With that last graphic you showed, why in heaven's name has the Weather Service not gotten off their butts and come up with an app? And see, James Tulsa knew exactly what I was going to say, and why they cannot, why they're so afraid of the private sector. The private sector should endorse it as well. Mm-hmm. And the U.S. government, the National Weather Service should have an app. Period. Case closed. I'm through.
So why don't they have an app? I mean, they're afraid. They're afraid
the National Weather Service
of the private sector.
Oh, absolutely.
Where is Rick? We need Rick here for this.
Yeah. This is why he's not on the show. He knew somehow we're going to get into this.
Yeah.
I'm busy tonight. I can't make it because you might be talking about Weather Service apps.
But that point about mobile app, the other interesting thing about that, for a mobile app at least, most of those giving alerts now, that's a passive alert system. Somebody can have a mobile app and not have to make the conscious choice to devote brain cycles to constantly checking weather on a severe weather day. It's why people clamor for outdoor sirens. That's one of the things from my master's thesis research that came up was the two top things that people wanted to get notifications from for severe weather were both passive.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I think, and I'm trying to think how the Weather Service will do it because it's going to be something created by the government, so it's not going to be that good anyway. But bottom line, how about having it so you could enter your home zip code, maybe a place where you're going to visit, set up a couple of others, and you get all warnings within 25 miles. I don't even mind that. I know that, with NOAA Weather Radio, it's a lot more selective. We're going to partial county and parish territory warnings at some point. I realize that, but and I'm not knocking James, the TV station apps, because they do a great job where they are these days. And that primarily comes from the vendors, I assume. Mm-hmm. And I don't have any problem with that. But the Weather Service, think about it, folks. It is the only government agency without an app. Pretty much the only government agency without an app.
Any phone that can run an app has a GPS in it. So just set your radius for current position and go.
Yeah.
So, but let me just say this. I think I hear this a lot. People say, well, I've got the Weather Service app on my phone. So is there some deception in these app stores of some apps that are billing themselves as NOAA or National Weather Service? I've just not had time to explore this. Do we know?
I think there's a link on their home screen.
You've got to be cautious out there, user beware. It's the same thing with getting the forecast, James, from an app. It's great until you find out the app never had human input. It's all using one model, which happens to suck today. So that forecast is no good. And, that's why I like the Weather Service. They can, their homes, their home web pages, office web pages, and they can get that stuff down to an app and then be able to get warnings as well. That can be done. Oh,
I did an interview for some online publication, and I didn't know the title of the article would be this, but the crap apps, cloudy with a chance of BS, and they
there you go.
Spelled it out right there. But no, so yeah, the Weather Service doesn't have one. So so the question is, what do you tell people? What would you advise people to put on their phone? Everybody on the panel here, to go around and make some suggestions, or tell us what's on your phone. I mean, you give us some ideas, because people that are listening to this show, that they want to know.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I do, I'll be honest with you, it's not going to help me that much in a warning situation, but I've gotten the Weather Service website and saved it on the home page where it quacks like an app, and it quacks like an app. That's what I've done, but I also have some paid ones as well, because I want to see different views and so forth.
So give us one, Troy. I mean, give us a good one.
Well, I mean,
pick one. And listen, nobody here has any business ties. We're not endorsing anything here. We're just throwing out some ideas.
I right now, if I'm going to rely on anything, I'd rely on National Weather Service and knock theirs down to an icon on my homepage on my smart device.
So a web-based app, which is the way apps used to be on the iPhone. When there was the first iPhone, there were no apps. You just had a web-based app.
Yep.
All right, James A., give us a good app that people need on their phone.
I think any of the vendor ones that the TV stations are using now all do the passive alert. I mean, it's active on the app side, of course, but if you have that on your phone and you take the few minutes to set it up initially, then you're going to get alerts at saved locations. I think ours is from the weather company, and if I'm not mistaken, you can have some saved locations. So if you're traveling, you can still get the alerts from home or where you are currently located. So, if you're out and your kids are home, you can call them and let them know. But I think anything that delivers the alert without having to actually go into the app repeatedly and check the weather is probably what you want to get.
All right, Jen, give us some app advice.
So, obviously with so many radio stations, I get alerts on my phone for those particular stations, and I use Weather Message to get that. But I use an app called Storm Shield, and that one you can put a pin in, whatever location. And so I have a pin in Indianapolis, so I can track stuff for my aunt. And out toward Pennsylvania, and then I put a pin in for counties to my west and southwest. For the most part, I've got my head in it anyway, but sometimes I may not be paying attention to Indianapolis, and it will actually say a tornado watch has been issued for your area. And I pick up my phone and I see, oh, it's Indianapolis, and then I can send something to my aunt. So that one I really like, and it's free. And you can look at the forecast. It also has a broader radar view and what have you. So I think it's a good one to have.
All right, and Bill Murray, I know our guest is here, but real quick.
I just want to recognize Wayne Neely, who has joined us. Wayne,
hey, Wayne.
It's good to have you on, and we'll be talking hurricanes in just a minute. But right now we're running through what our favorite apps are. Weather.
But here I'm putting you on the spot, Bill. So radar, you're going to get Radar Scope or Radar Omega. Which one are you going to get?
Both. Radar Scope is more my go-to, but there are a lot of features of Radar Omega that I like. So I do have both of those right there, front and center. So yeah, if you know anything at all about weather, if you're totally ignorant to the process, you might need something a little different. But if you know anything about weather, if you've ever watched James Spann for 5 minutes or James Adelot for 5 minutes, Radar Scope or Radar Omega are just really, really good. Now, I'm sure you're showing a live right there, James A. A couple of my other favorites, though, and we had this guy on the show a few years ago. If you just love Weather Service text, there's something called WX Informant. And I don't know if anybody still has that on their phone, but it still works. And I use it for anything text. You just pick the Weather Service office and then the product, And you can look up anything, the area forecast discussions, the warnings, the zone forecasts, all that.
Well, Bill, will it notify you when a new product comes out? Will it if you tell it to?
No,
Okay.
it does not. It does not tell you. So you have to rely on something else to get a notification. But if you if you're out and you want to see something the Weather Service is talking about, that's a great place to do it. I do keep the Weather Company and Weather Underground apps on my phone because I do like their alternative forecasts at times. I think they're kind of interesting. Barron's Critical Weather, which I guess James A is the same thing as their TV app. Is that right?
I don't know, but I think you're right.
That has great push notifications. And I can tell you anytime there's a warning or a watch for here, because my phone goes off about 17 times. But that one, Storm Shield that Jen mentioned, is good. I do like that one a lot. And so, those are good. But, the Barron app to me, is almost enough to make me want to get their service, for our Alabama WX, just because.
Is that a paid one, Bill and James?
No, it's free
for Barron.
It's free. It costs the entity, whoever the entity is, a lot to subscribe to the Barron service.
Right.
But
but it's not a general app.
But it does have some content creation features, Troy. So I have to give the Barron folks a shout out for that. There's a lot of customization to it. Who's our friend in Knoxville that went out on his own and has his own app? David.
Phil Fulmer.
What is David's last name? One of the stations in Knoxville. He went out, has his own app, and is doing his own forecasting. We need to have him on the show again sometime. But anyway, that's probably more than you asked for, James. But that's my input.
Okay, well, bring it. Let's bring
INWS. What about INWS? Does anybody else use that?
I do. Yeah,
because you can define your own little polygons, area of protection, and if a warning or a watch encroaches on any of those, you're going to get a notification.
But that's only for media and government emergency management, I believe.
Is that true, Troy? Okay,
I believe so.
I'm glad you said that, because I know that it was at one time. But you're right, National Weather Service Partners.
Yep,
that's interesting. I have had that for a long, long time, and it is reliable.
Very good.
Well, nobody said MySpace, so I'm going to delete that.
Oh, darn. I've got two as well. All right, Bill, bring in our guest before he hangs up on us.
Well, I'm really excited tonight that we were able to get him on the show tonight. Wayne Neely is a meteorologist at the Bahamas Bureau of Meteorology. He's, of course, a renowned speaker and a very prolific author. And he just recently published the book, Hurricane Dorian, the story of the greatest and deadliest hurricane to impact the Bahamas in the modern era. Wayne, welcome to the show.
Good evening, all. It's good to be back again. You guys look great out there.
I was going to say, you were on in January of 2020 the last time, so we were about due for a visit from you.
Yeah, I was overdue. Actually, COVID and the Hurricane Dorian actually interrupted normally I produce a book every year, but this one, it had such a great impact on the Bahamas that it took me a much longer time to write and compile information.
Well, Wayne, we were all just, heartbroken, terrified as we watched this hurricane intensify to incredible levels and then, come right for parts of the Bahamas and then just stall.
Yes.
Just unbelievable that happened. Talk about the impact of that hurricane on what parts of the island. I know that it was very severe.
Yes, it was swept to two of our major islands, Abaco and Grand Bahama, and it actually devastated the Bahamas. It's the costliest hurricane in Bahamian history. It cost the country $3.4 billion. It's the first $1 billion hurricane for us as a nation. Prior to that, the costliest storm prior to that would have been March of 2016, which cost $600 million. And prior to that would be Andrew of 1990. $150 million. So it's going to impact us as a country probably for the next 15, 20 years at least.
Talk about the human toll.
To this date, actually, the country is still reeling from the repercussions from that storm. Like I said, it devastated the island of Abaco and Grand Bahama. And in terms of economy, the second economy for the Bahamas is Grand Bahama, and the third is Abaco. So it basically forced the government and the country to actually focus on the redevelopment of those islands that were severely impacted. And I've been there recently, both islands recently, and the devastation is still clear. You can still see a lot of places that still have not rebuilt as yet.
How do you rate the preparedness of the Bahamas for a severe hurricane like Dorian, Wayne, leading up in the days to that storm? And since then, has it changed?
Yes and no. Well, prior to Dorian, I call it the template storm, because with Dorian, prior to Dorian, most Bahamians didn't take hurricanes very seriously. They would wait a few hours before the hurricane approaches, normally about 24 hours before the storm approaches, that they start to make any preparations. And typically, well, we've been fortunate, we've been lucky with the prior storms. Perhaps after the storm is over, probably by the following week, everything is back to normal. This one is a bit different, and it worked out well in a way. If there's a silver lining behind that dark cloud, Hurricane Dorian, actually, when it came, normally your infrastructures are down, but we had the local television and phone companies, they had their services up, so they were able to broadcast, and people saw throughout the Bahamas and the rest of the world the impact of Dorian. And Abaco, most of those persons, they knew the storm was coming. In fact, they had the press conference. The prime minister, who at the time was the Right Honorable Hubert Minnis, he said, "Look, take the storm seriously." And they went to all of the keys. Abaco, if you're familiar with the Bahamas, we have a lot of islands and keys. And most in Abaco, a lot of the surrounding islands around Abaco, the surrounding keys, they're inhabited by many persons. And so the member of parliament for Abaco, he went to every one of those keys along with interpreters. And they recall the Mud and Pigeon P. Those are two areas that are primarily supported by Haitian migrant workers. And they want all of them to remove all those areas, because those were low-lying areas. If you're familiar with the Bahamas, we're extremely flat. The average height above sea level is 23 feet. And the storm surge was 21 to 28 feet. And so there was no comparison. So when the storm came, all those areas were inundated with water and flood damage, and a lot of those persons, and 74 persons died on record. 63 in Abaco and 11 in Grand Bahama. And to this date, 60 are still reported missing and assumed dead. So the fatality, it's the deadliest. Now, just to give you, normally the warnings are extremely well. I work at the Department of Meteorology. We issue warnings ahead of time, and we do something called an alert, which is a 60-hour interval. It gives you enough time to get out of the area for an approaching hurricane. And those were issued. Normally the press conferences were held, but it's just that it's Mother Nature, and the water rose up in some ways 28 feet. You can't prevent that. In fact, the Minister of Agriculture, he lived in Grand Bahama, and he was actually trapped in his house in 15, 20 feet of water. And they had to rescue the Minister of Agriculture in jet skis. Boaters went around to different houses and rescuing persons from different houses with jet skis. And those jet skis saved a lot of lives. And there's a whole lot of stories of people losing their lives in these flood waters.
Wayne, Troy Kimmel here. And again, thank you for joining us tonight, Wayne.
Yes.
From your viewpoint in the Bahamas Department of Meteorology, you watch as people rebuild the islands a little bit. Wayne, you think maybe to some degree they're building back a little stronger just because of that? Do you feel like that maybe you'll see some improvements, or people know how serious it can be?
Yes, and yeah, I think now the government is very cognizant of that fact, and in fact, they're really controlling the rebuilding efforts. And we have this. I think we have one of the strongest building codes in the region for hurricanes. It's followed to a T. And as a building I built recently myself, I saw the damage. I mean, not the damage. I saw the impact, because you have to have, for example, hurricane clips, steel into the concrete, embedded into the concrete, and certain types of roofs. And so they are strictly enforced in the Bahamas. And after Hurricane Dorian, it forced the government to reevaluate several things. One thing that they reevaluated was the fact that they realized that the building codes perhaps needs to be strengthened, and they right now they're trying to reinforce the stronger building codes. And another thing that they also looked at is what we call mandatory evacuation, because the weather authorities, they went into those respective communities and settlements and told them to move. A lot of them didn't move, and they've had prior experiences with those other hurricanes. For you guys, when you say evacuate, I remember you see the long lines of people moving out of that area, but there are still some who are going to remain. And so they implemented, shortly after Dorian, they implemented stronger building codes, and they also implemented mandatory evacuations where authorities can force you to move now. Prior to Dorian, that did not happen.
Wayne, got a question.
Yes.
From our standpoint here in the U.S., we deal with the National Weather Service, and of course, you're the Bahamas Department of Meteorology. I'm kind of interested just to know, during major events like Dorian,
yes,
do you get the opportunity do you have an opportunity to talk to the forecasters at the National Hurricane Center in Miami? Is that part of the protocol?
Yes, we do. And in fact, before we issue a warning, we director consults with them, and we consult with them in terms of the movement, the track, and any other significant factor. And before a warning is issued or a watch is given or an alert, we consult with them, and sometimes they even suggest to us information which we follow, because they're the experienced persons in the region when it comes to hurricane tracking and monitoring of those storms.
Thank you.
Wayne, when you issue evacuation orders, voluntary, I guess, until, hopefully we can get to the mandatory level there. But every place has vulnerable populations, whether they're elderly or medically unable to move. What kind of plans are in place, and how big a percentage of the population in that Dorian evacuation notice needed assistance evacuating? And then do people have automobiles? Where do you go on such low-lying islands?
Yes, interestingly, yes, that's a good question. Unfortunately, most of the persons who died were Haitian migrant workers. We're in the Bahamas, we're a tourism-driven nation, and everything rises and falls on tourism. So, and sometimes we require a lot of working. We have a lot of Haitian migrant, and they live in what we call Haitian shanty towns. They're not up to standards. They just come and just build the buildings, and they're not up to standard or not up to building code regulations. In fact, to give you an example, when Andrew devastated South Florida, the governor and a team of representatives came from Florida, South Florida, and used the template from our building codes, because like I said, we had one of the strongest in the region, and they tweaked it for South Florida, and they use part of our building code. So we have a really rigid building code. But those Haitian shanty towns, they were not up to standard. So the first thing came, the first set of strong winds came, they were gone, and they were no match, because a lot of those migrant workers remained in those homes, and when the water came, if you look at the pictures of Dorian that I have in my book, or pictures on the internet, you'll see massive areas. It looked just like a massive area of just lumber and timber scattered all around. And so, but in terms of preparation, the government goes around and give warnings. And many times, like you said, many times, and prior hurricanes, other government officials did the same thing. And we've been fortunate in the sense that they warned them, and many persons, for example, in Machu in 2016, the government warned the persons to move from low-lying areas. Now, the problem that we have in the Bahamas, like I said, we have a average height of 23 feet, and the average storm height, we had a category 5 hurricane, and we've had 4 within the last 8 years. So that's no match, and you're going to get that amount of height and storm surge. And with climate change impacting our nation, and the water table is much higher than it used to be, so you're having more severe flooding we're finding that we're having more severe flooding. Even with just afternoon thunderstorm, we're getting significant amount of flooding.
So where do people evacuate to?
We have hurricane shelters, and they comprise mostly of churches, schools. For example, in Dorian, it was in Marsh Harbor, it was the government complex and several of the churches, which are built to higher standards and stronger standards to be recognized as a hurricane shelter. And unfortunately, with category 5, as you know, 157 mile per hour winds, that's no match for them. And a lot of those shelters were the roof of many of the churches and buildings, the building shelters were actually blown off. So they had, in my book, you had persons going from about 3 or 4 different hurricane shelters in one storm, and they had to brace the elements and the flooding to get to a safe location. And that's how a lot of them succumbed to their injuries.
Are there many, one more follow-up, Jen, it's all yours. Are there any vertical evacuation places where
most of our buildings are we typically don't have, like how you guys have tall buildings. We basically have, most of them are housing units, not level 3 and 4 level in terms of building wise.
Hi, Wayne. It's nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you.
Wanted just to focus in on, where is your office?
It's in Nassau.
Okay.
So
I want to focus in on that. And how do you all prepare? If you have a Cat 5 coming, and how do you all prepare? Because I'm sure you're all still working and trying to get the warnings out and what have you. What is your protocol? And did you have impacts from Dorian where you were?
No, Nassau was actually unimpacted by Dorian in any significant way. So, and that was the problem that the government of the Bahamas faced. And when Dorian struck the country, we were just reeling from the impacts of COVID. And and when Dorian struck the country, most persons, everyone around the world said that the Bahamas was devastated. And this is the most media covered hurricane, first of all, because of its records, and second, because of the great devastation it had on the islands of the Bahamas. And when that happened, most of the persons, because the Bahamas is basically an archipelago, and a bunch of islands and keys. The only 2 islands that were impacted significantly were Abaco and Grand Bahama. By the following day, I had to be back to work, and it was normal. And the average, every other island, persons went about. In Zoma tourism, the hotels will remain open. In Nassau, the hotels remain open. A friend of mine, Juliet Kayam and Miles O'Brien, they came down and interviewed the day after that, and they were looking for damages in Nassau, and there was none. And so we were fortunate. But the problem is that when people on the media saw that, they heard the Bahamas, they all assumed that the Bahamas is one landmass like the United States, where it's a bunch of islands and keys, and the Hurricane Dorian only affected Abaco and Grand Bahama in a significant way.
So Wayne, this is the time of the year where a lot of agencies are promoting their hurricane forecast, their seasonal outlooks.
Yes.
Coming up in 2 weeks. We're going to tell you exactly what the hurricane season will be like.
Yes.
Does your agency issue seasonal outlooks for hurricane season?
No, we don't. We tend to rely on the National Hurricane Center and Colorado State University, Phil Klossbach and the team at Colorado State and the National Hurricane Center. Most of the persons, they ask me about hurricane information, and I try to stay them away because what I found out over the years is that whenever those outlooks come out, even prior to Phil Klossbach was Professor William Grant, they follow those to the T. And if you notice in my books, most of the insurance companies actually stand behind me and support me for those books. They get a pretty good benefit from it. But when I talk about hurricanes, what I found out over the years, when I talked about it's going to be a low season, they say, okay, it's no problem. So we go about our normal way. And when I talk about a busy season, people get scared and they get, after Dorian, especially after Dorian, I remember one case in point after Dorian, there was another system that was about to impact the Bahamas. And I put it on my Facebook page and my weather page, and everyone started, they started around me and said, look, why are you talking about hurricanes? We don't want to hear hurricanes anymore. But the problem is that with the warnings, we issue those warnings, but in terms of preparation, I advise them that sometimes you just need one major hurricane to impact your region or impact your country for it to be a devastating season. And that can come in above average year, and that can come below average year. I always remind them about Hurricane Andrew. I think in Hurricane Andrew, in the 1992 hurricane season, they only had one major hurricane, which was Hurricane Andrew, and only 10 named storms. But Hurricane Andrew is one of the most devastating storms that impacted the Bahamas in its history.
Yeah, all it takes is one. That's
Yes.
what we always say. All it takes is one. And I struggle with these seasonal outlooks. Like, what do people do with this information?
Yes.
You've got to be ready every season. But having said that, what are your thoughts on this season? You've looked at the data. You've looked at the inso phase. Come on, Ned. We're just talking here. So give us your thoughts.
Yeah, only a few people listening. Yeah, but actually, first of all, the preseason forecast, I listen to them and I use it as a guideline. But I know that if they say 17, I know that that's not an exact science. But what I try to do is I try inform and educate Bahamians about the impact of hurricanes in general and the impact of hurricanes on my country of the Bahamas. And one of the things that I stress is the need for hurricane insurance. A lot of persons, we live in a hurricane belt. I say that, look, we're not going to be, the Bahamas is impacted by more hurricanes than most other countries in the region. The only person who have more hurricanes than us are you guys in the United States. And so I advise them to prepare for every season and every storm like it's a major storm. And in terms of forecasting, I try not to rely on the numbers because the numbers could get you in problems. And, but that's just me. And unfortunately, with the numbers, the local insurance companies here in the Bahamas, if they go for an above average season, our insurance rates goes up. Well, it's the same thing. We have the same issue with Florida. Whenever they forecast an active season, it goes up. And in fact, I spoke to the insurance, they had a symposium that I spoke to them, and they said the problem is every year the rate of insurance goes up because there's damages. In 2015, we had Hurricane Joaquin. 2016, we had Hurricane Matthew. 2017, we had Hurricane Irma. 2019, we had Dorian. And 2020, we had Isaias. And last year, we had Nicole and others. So every year, there's a storm. Prior to that, we probably had a storm on average once every 3-4 years. And they were not major, but all of those storms that I mentioned, with the exception of Isaias and Nicole, they were category 4 or greater. And they devastated certain parts of the Bahamas in a significant fact. the first time they ever mandatory evacuated an area, an island, was actually in Irma of 2007, where they evacuated the entire island because it was such a low-lying area called Ragged Island. So we're now seeing the impact of these hurricanes in more significant ways that we never saw in history.
Wayne, I've got another question for you about the Department of Meteorology there. I mean, we sort of have a history in this country anyway, that in a lot of years, and it's now not the case, but in a lot of cases, the agencies, weather agencies, were co-located at airports. And I'm wondering, in Nassau, are y'all co-located at the airport? Do you do other things, Wayne? Like, do you prepare the observations for Nassau, the aviation observations? Do you prepare like the TAFs, the terminal forecast, and things like that?
Yes, we do. We do observation at the Department of Meteorology, responsible for forecasting hurricane, forecasting the weather throughout the Bahamas. And in fact, for hurricane forecasting, we actually are responsible for the islands, the Turks and Caicos Islands themselves. We issue aviation forecasts, we issue marine forecasts, we issue forecasts for the hotels, we issue forecasts for the aircrafts as well. We're situated at the airport. I think one of the mandates that we have, regulation states that the meteorological office and the air traffic control must be at the airport. So we have to be at the airport. And we also issue we also have a reconnaissance aircraft. I mean, not sorry, reconnaissance, upper air ascents as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wayne, when you're considering the timeline for issuing these hurricane advisories, what's your sweet spot? What are you aiming for? How much warning? Is there too much warning in the Bahamas? Is there too little, of course?
Unfortunately, even with the warnings that we have, well, I think since Dorian, I'm very interested, not that I want another major hurricane in my country, but I'm interested to see the impact that a future hurricane will have post Dorian. Because prior to Dorian, most persons, like I said, they didn't take those warnings seriously. And most persons, they would wait until, like I say, about 12 hours before they are absolutely 100% sure that that storm will impact an area within the Bahamas. Let's say in New Providence, they will wait until the day before, and they all run to the food stores, and they all run to the gas station, the hardware stores in massive numbers. And they don't do that a week and a half up. I try to advise them to plan from the beginning of the hurricane season and do it in increments. Let's say buy canned goods rather than buying, if you average buy 10 canned goods, buy 12 in June, and 12 in July, and over time gradually. But in terms of preparation, most persons don't take the warning seriously. But like I said, I'm interested to see, because it's for the first time you've actually seen, for example, one, I don't know if any of you guys saw it. There was a video with a lady in Abaco with a baby, and the hurricane Dorian had blew the roof off the house, and the water was up to about 10 feet, and she could not get her. She was in the water holding a baby, and she's calling on, she's on her telephone calling everybody to please rescue me and my baby. And that image went around the world. That was one image that went around the world. Another image was with the picture you see on my book on Dorian, with a Haitian migrant worker. She has her hands outstretched, and just the look on the face, and the face and the image and the devastation in the background of the photo shows everything. And the guy, a friend of mine, who took the picture, Al Diaz from the Miami Herald, he actually won a Pulitzer Prize for that picture. So wow. It's just a matter of finding. It's just a matter of, I'm interested to find Dorian was the last major hurricane, so I'm interested to find out what would be the impact of Dorian, the legacy of Dorian on future hurricanes and preparations in the Bahamas. That's what I'm interested in knowing. I won't be able to know until after another hurricane hits and
hopefully you'll have a few years to hopefully pass so that you can recover. Wayne, you're friends with Max Mayfield, one of our favorite people. He wrote part of, I think, the forward.
The forward, yes, he did.
And he says at the beginning of that, if you want to know what it's like to go through a Cat 5 hurricane, read Wayne's book. Because this is no small book. This is several hundred pages. Let's say at least 550 pages.
Yes.
And there's some amazing survival stories in there. Share one of those, Wayne, one of the ones that was most meaningful to you, because I was just riveted as I read them.
Yeah, they all, a lot of them are really fascinating. And a lot of them, unfortunately, I had to leave some of them out because to interview those persons, they were still impacted by those storms in a significant way. And it was difficult as an author and they, as they started to relate, some of them started crying so much that it was still raw in their minds. And there are two notable examples. There was one called Eric the Barber. He was a barber on Abaco, and he like others, they were in a hurricane shelter, and the roof came off, and they had to go into the waters. And unfortunately, a plywood off a roof took his hand off, took his left hand off, I think it was, and they had to actually do a yeoman's job to rescue him, in terms of to get him to first of all to get him from the flood, out of the flood, to the airport. And the airport was closed, and also both airports, all of the airports in Grand Bahama and Abaco were severely flooded. They were up with about 10, 15 feet of water on off the airport, so no flights could take off or land. And that was a critical issue. And the residents of Abaco gathered together, and they tried to save his life, and they did a yeoman's job of rescuing him from the location and getting him off the island to Florida to get mandatory. And he just made it just in time. There's several. There's one that another plywood. I see that a lot of your weather reporters, they go in the middle of the storm, with all the winds and everything blowing. The family was going from one building to the next, and a plywood came through and decapitated one of the ladies' heads. And their whole compelling, gruesome stories of the devastation that they have. And a lot of those persons, there's a lot of other stories of survival of impacted areas. And for example, there was another story in Grand Bahama where the waters was about 10 to 15 feet. And the only thing that was exposed was the roof. And there was a gentleman, him and his son, he swam into his house, rescued his son, put his son on top of the roof, and he went back in to get another person. And when he came, the wind blew the boy off, and he found him several days later. He was drowned. So, but there are a lot of compelling stories of survival. My most heroic, first story is actually the one with the jet ski operators in Grand Bahama. The areas that a lot of persons stayed in their homes. And like I said, the water's up to 28 feet. And they had some jet ski operators, when they learned that the minister was trapped in his house, they went and rescued him and his family. And when they also realized that many other persons had to be rescued, and they rescued several hundred persons, just like on jet skis. They would take them one at a time from flooded area into an area that was not flooded. And they were the true heroes of Hurricane Dorian, in my view.
Two things for Jen. I just sent Jen a book that James Spann knows about, the pharmacist James in Moulton, who interviewed all the survivors after the 1974 tornado outbreak. You haven't even unwrapped it yet. This book is fascinating because he went back and just took their verbatim statements, Wayne.
Yes.
And it's compelling.
Yes.
And I think it changes you. So that's another reason why I think your book is so important.
Yes.
But something that you did that Jen also does, you actually listed the victims.
Yes.
Each name one by one. And, and to some person, they might just go over that quickly.
Yeah.
But I sat and read every one of those names in my head,
Yes.
thinking about you writing them at the time. So I think there's a lot of meaning in what you do there,
Yes.
and Jen, what you do with Tornado Talk, for sure. So that was amazing. I think the thing that was most terrifying to me was watching the very clear eye of that hurricane
Yes.
on satellite imagery for several hours over the
Yes.
islands. Talk about that duration of the eye.
Yes.
And what that meant.
Well, first of all, as a meteorologist, and I guess all you guys would understand, as a meteorologist, it's like a newspaper and a late breaking news story. For me, I was fascinated by Dorian on one hand. I saw the perfect eye. I saw the eye wall replacement cycle being taken place just before that, knowing that once that happens, that's a clear indication that storm is going to eventually strengthen. I saw that the eyes it's almost like someone took a compass and just drew us a round circle. And I knew that beneath that storm, beneath that fascinating image, that me as a meteorologist, I stood in awe of watching it. And I knew that somehow that my people would be impacted in a significant way. I knew that prior to Dorian, I had written 14 other books on hurricanes and various different hurricanes. I knew that Dorian would be a turning point storm, a storm that would be for the century, I would say, because just looking at that storm, I never saw, it's the first time I've seen a hurricane like that in my life, and not even with Andrew, because now with Andrew, we had satellite pictures, and the clarity of these images now are much, much better now. So I saw that, I knew that image and the clear eye wall and the structure of the hurricane was so organized, so perfect. I knew that as a meteorologist, I was fascinated, but on one hand, I also knew, I feared that devastation was going to be worse than anyone would realize. And both cases happened.
And of course, in the United States, there was, very serious concern that it would continue on to Florida, and the forecast from the National Hurricane Center
Yes
was spectacular.
Yes.
In many ways, not only for the Bahamas, but for the United States. And that was pretty amazing, for sure. Talk about for a minute the impact on tourism, because obviously tourism is a huge industry for the Bahamas.
Yes.
Grand Bahama and Abaco, do they have a lot of tourism assets there, or how do they rate in relation to other parts of the country?
And in terms of tourism arrivals, Nassau is the #1 tourist destination for the Bahamas, and that's followed by, interestingly, Grand Bahama and then Abaco. And unfortunately, our second and third tourism destination, and Bahamas earns a lot of its money from tourism, the tourism dollar. So the #2 and #3 really islands impacted, really devastated the economy of the Bahamas. And to this day, we're still feeling the repercussions from that now. And in terms of the economy, it really devastated, because hurricanes is something that you can't plan for. And Dorian was $3.4 billion. Like I said, the last time after the costly storm prior to that was March of 2016, which was 600 million. And the then Prime Minister called that astronomical. 3.4 billion is we're going to be paying for that for a long time. And, in terms of tourism, and, many years ago when I joined the Department of Meteorology, they had something called the Bahamas Tourism Weather Conference. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they did, most meteorologists in the United States loved it, because the government of Bahamas sent a free ticket to most meteorologists around the region, especially the United States and Canada and the Caribbean. And the idea was that to expose and talk about, persons came and talked about weather. And that's where I met most of those friends. My friend Max Mayfield, Brian Norcross, Phil Klossbach, Professor William, they all came every year, and they looked forward to that trip. And, and one of the things that the Bahamas got from is that the advertising that we got, most of the persons would be in Bermuda shorts and a nice tropical shirt, and they forecasting the weather live from the Bahamas, and it was a great sell for the Bahamas. And the idea was that the government spent a few $1 million, which wasn't much at the time. I mean, they spent a few million to host the conference, and for a while they ended it. And when Dorian struck the country, unfortunately, the money that they spent on tourism conference, they had to probably triple and quadruple that money that they had to spend throughout the world to advertise, to let them know, because once they saw that, they said Hurricane Dorian devastated the Bahamas. Most persons think that the Bahamas is one island. So they all canceled their trips. They all canceled their trip to Nassau. They canceled their trip to Exuma. They canceled their trip to Club Med in San Salvador, or the different locations, Sheraton or the Hilton or in Nassau, assuming that Nassau was devastated, so it doesn't make sense to come. So the government lost millions and millions of dollars. Whereas had the conference still been, they still have that conference, most of the meteorologists would realize that Abaco and Grand Bahama are just two islands, and the other islands are also with tourism, because one thing is the government did. The government sent those meteorologists to every island in the Bahamas, and the idea was to show them, to educate them about the Bahamas and about the islands of the Bahamas and the geography of the Bahamas especially. And when Dorian struck the country, we lost a lot of tourism revenue dollars, because most persons believe that the Bahamas is just one landmass and the entire Bahamas was devastated. And like I said, by the next day I was back to work. The only thing that was, you had a few broken limbs in the streets and flooding in low-lying areas, which was normal. So most persons went about their normal way. Other than only two islands were impacted, Abaco and Grand Bahama.
Yeah, I heard a comparison, Wayne, that the Bahamas is about the size of Texas.
Yes.
Is that pretty accurate?
Yes.
And if you thought about a hurricane, even a major hurricane hitting Houston or Corpus Christi or Brownsville, large parts of the state of Texas would be unimpacted.
Right, yes.
So I thought that was an important message in the days after Dorian to get out, that, the rest of the country, had fared well or had not been impacted at all. And that the tourism dollars were going to be really, really important to the economy going forward. So James A., you had a question for Wayne or a comment?
Yeah, Wayne, what is the breakdown on the direct impact on the GDP of Dorian, and then this residual impact to tourism on the GDP of the Bahamas?
Well, first of all, 70% of our income comes from tourism. What do you call it? Tourism dollars. So everything rises and falls on tourism for us. So when COVID hit, it devastated our economy because there was no revenue. Once they closed the country, there was no revenue coming in, and that pays the government workers, that fixes the infrastructures that needed to get developed. And it was with the airports that responsible for all the maintenance of the airports and the seaports and everything else. So everything rises and falls on tourism for 70% of it. And the second is banking and finance, and and banking and finance is now taking a lesser role now. Tourism, I think it's going to probably a bit higher than that now, but that's the last official figure. 70% of tourism, and the rest is banking and finance and sport fishing as number 3. So everything and all of those are impacted by the weather in a significant way. And so without that tourism dollar, we as a country would suffer severe repercussions from that. And we did suffer severe repercussions from the tourism, from the actual hurricane itself. In fact, I wanted to say that the former government, I think they lost the elections right after Dorian. The elections, we had elections taking place. Election took place, and the former government, I think they lost the government because of their, I guess you could say, their what people perceived as their inactions because of Hurricane Dorian. and on the islands of Abaco and Grand Bahama. So the persons Abaco who typically historically supported that government, and Grand Bahama who typically supported that party or political party, they went against them because they felt that they weren't doing enough in terms of getting the country back to some degree of normalcy after the hurricane. So they lost the popular vote on those islands. And so hence the popular vote, they also lost the elections. And we have a new prime minister now that's in place, and he's working to try and rebuild the economy of the Bahamas.
So Wayne, rate the relief efforts afterwards and which agencies really stood out. I know you have pictures in your book of Team Rubicon, which we're familiar with, and Samaritan's Purse. Where should we be sending our dollars?
Well, first of all,
internationally, when these things happen.
After Dorian occurred, a lot of persons, and once people saw the devastation, they want to give. And first of all, one of the things that we had after Dorian to let people know that the Bahamas, we did a yeoman's job. I don't know if you know Lenny Kravitz. He did an excellent job of going on Ellen and going on several talk shows to let Bahamians know, let people know that the Bahamas was still open and how they can give. And a lot of people locally, the Bahamas, we have a local chapter of the Bahamas Red Cross. We also have a governing body. I think you call it FEMA. We call it NEMA, National Emergency Management Agency. And if you want to, you can give those two reputable companies, reputable industry. NEMA is government related, and Red Cross is private, as you know. So you can contribute to any one of those organizations. And there are a ton of organizations. Unfortunately, when Dorian occurred, there was a lot of organizations that popped up trying to take advantage, but most of them, most persons, they did a yeoman's job of giving to the Bahamas, and because of that, those donations got us off our feet, got us back on our feet in a record time, compared to perhaps the great devastation that faced them with just the Bahamas relying on itself.
So we need our 1,000th show in the Bahamas.
Yeah.
And the drinks are on Kimmelstown.
Yeah.
It'll be in March, so that'll be before hurricane season. So that's
like Fletch. Put it on Underhill.
Good.
So Wayne, you mentioned insurance. How hard is it to get insurance for homeowners in the Bahamas?
Homeowners insurance is it's a bit like everywhere else. It's a bit expensive, and every year it goes up. The insurance rates premiums goes up because, like I said, and for the last 10 years, we've had those major category 4 hurricanes. So if you're a betting person, you know that Bahamas being impacted. So the insurance companies, what they call the reinsurer industry, or the person who insured insurance companies, no longer, we similar to, same thing is happening to the state of Florida after Hurricane Andrew. Most persons in state of Florida found it difficult to get insurance after Hurricane Andrew, and that's still like that today. Well, in the Bahamas, I just spoke to several of those the top insurance executives, and they said that's the problem that they're having now, difficult getting the Bahamas reinsurance to get them to insure the Bahamas as a nation. Because whether you like it or not, insuring the Bahamas is a gamble against hurricanes, because we impacted by, there's 4 types of hurricanes impacting the region, and we're the only country other than the state of Florida that's impacted by all 4 in a significant way. And we directly in the path what you call Hurricane Alley. So we impacted by more hurricanes than most other countries, and most of them only impacted by the Cabo Verde or the Cape Verde type hurricanes, and the Bahamas we impacted by what Professor William Gray called the Bahama Busters, or the Gulf of Mexico, or the Caribbean Sea type hurricanes. So we impacted by all of them. So if you're a betting person, and I wouldn't want to bet on the Bahamas as an insurance industry, persons who got insurance in the Bahamas, and that's the problem that the local insurance industry has now with finding insurance, the reinsurance people to insure the Bahamas again.
Wayne, I've got a question about that insurance. Has anybody done a cost analysis of how much of premium savings those enhanced building codes that you mentioned earlier make on those premiums? and perhaps how much more pushing building codes even to a more strict level would mean with any kind of insurance premium reduction?
Well, right now, not that I know of, but I do know that the insurance industry, one of the things that they did, because I'm like the lone gunman out there most of the times when it comes to hurricanes. And initially, actually, when I wrote my first 4 or 5 books, people didn't pay them any mind. And most persons because every one of my books, one of the things that I do, I interview persons who experience a hurricane in a significant way. And that is done for several reasons. First of all, to document the impact of those hurricanes. Second, and to also to show the importance of hurricanes and how it could impact your life, and to show them that, look here, if this person did this person stayed in their home and they were about 25 feet away from the water and they were impacted by the storm surge. I live in 25 feet away from the water myself, so I better go to a hurricane shelter or something. So the insurance companies, most of them sponsor my book, and the idea is that they're trying to get more people to insure their homes, because the average person doesn't insure much of their homes in the Bahamas. And I've been working with them to try and get persons to insure their homes in a significant. So if you look at all my books, the insurance companies that sponsor them, of course the insurance, and they're no dummies. They're gonna get impact, because I have their name and address and contact information at the back of my book, and they benefit from it. But that's not my point. My point is to try to get people to understand the need for hurricane insurance and the importance of hurricane insurance. And in terms of research, I'm not aware of anybody who's done the research, but other than me writing about the impact. But that's a good pivot, something to consider in the future for me.
I want to make sure the panel has any other hurricane related questions, because I want to get into some personal information about you. We're all fascinated about your background, Wayne. Anything else from the panel relating to hurricanes or Dorian that we want to talk about?
Hey, Wayne, do you know Mike Brennan, the new director of the National Hurricane Center?
That's a good one.
Yes, I know of him. I know him, but I'm not as well as I know Chris Lanze and Max Mayfield and others. But I do know him. Yes.
Yeah, Bill, we got to get him on the show.
I know. I'm always terrified of that public affairs.
Why do you change directors so much over there? So
we're kind of happy with the promotion that the last one got, but we did go
my
through
good
a slew
friend
of
Bill
them.
Reed, Max Mayfield, and they once you get used to those persons, next thing you know, they're gone.
They get tired of working with the TV people.
But that could be daunting sometimes.
We kind of were supportive of that last move, because we like our new director of the Weather Service down here. Talk about the organization at the Bahamas Department of Meteorology, Wayne. How many team members y'all have? You know, what's the director's position like? That sort of stuff.
Well, we got rid of prior director in the next year, and we have a new director, Jeffrey Simmons, who's doing an amazing job of trying to get. Prior to him, the director, prior director, he was not too. I don't think he was a good director, in my personal opinion. But the new director is much more go-getter person. He's getting the entire staff involved, and so he's doing a pretty good job. I'm impressed. Unfortunately, he should be retiring soon as well. And because by the time they get to the director, I guess I'm answering my own question. By the time they get to directorship, they reach the mandatory age for the Bahamas. You have to retire mandatory retirement at age 65, and he's almost there. And by the time you get to the director's chair, you're already very old at that age. So he's there. And the next person, I think, in terms of we have a good slate of cadres who I think would make excellent directors. One guy I'm looking to see, I hope he succeeds well, is a gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Green, and I have great hopes for him.
Well, that's funny, because I in my high school annual, it says that was my job I wanted. Wayne was director of the National Hurricane Center. When I first met Max Mayfield, I told him that. And he said, Bill, you can start tomorrow morning, because he said the job is overrated.
That's something Max would say.
I think you'd rather be forecasting hurricanes than dealing with all the politicians.
Yeah. Oh, the politics is I know firsthand the politics. The politics is crazy. Not only the internal politics in the department, but the politics outside the department is also daunting as well. But the good thing about we are professional, the department, we're a bunch of professional persons, and I would like to think we do our job as best as we could with the equipment and resources that we get from the government. So we do a pretty good job. And all governments, whenever they ask to do something for the Department of Meteorology, they don't even think twice. And one of those ministers, they moved her from this department, but she did an excellent job. She got us the new Doppler radars, Glennis Anna Martin. She did a pretty good job of providing us instruments. We have lightning detector and those things. So all that helps the forecasters to forecast in a more accurate and more quick manner, I should say.
Now, you mentioned that you forecast for the hotels. Do the resorts contract with you? Do they pay for that service, or is it something that comes out of the tax dollars?
Unfortunately, weather information in the country is free to everybody. And for a while, the government, the government for years have been trying to figure out a way for the department to make some money off it. And I think we as a country, we as an organization, sometimes it's not a good thing, because so when it comes to resources, because meteorology doesn't provide funding compared to persons that revenue, for example, let's say customs department or an immigration department that generates funds for the government, they don't look too highly on us sometimes. And over the years, sometimes we've suffered. But most persons, in terms of the equipment, once we ask for equipment, they get it. Now, sometimes you have to ask them 10 and 11 times every so often, but that's the nature of, I guess that's the nature with any government.
How many network radars do you have across the nation?
We have about 5, and one in Nassau, one in Abaco, and they're still trying to get some sorted out, but hopefully with this hurricane season, all the radars will be up and running pretty well.
Can we see those on Radar Scope and Radar Omega? Anybody? Do we know? Do we have access to those radars? James Adelot, you might.
I haven't seen them.
Know. I haven't either. I don't think so. That'd be nice to have. But
you
do have a nice.
Hey Wayne, that radar on Abaco, I assume that it went away during Dorian. Okay.
Yeah, it was Dorian. It didn't last, and unfortunately, that's a sad part. As a meteorologist, I'm disappointed in that, because Dorian was. It's like the big show, and the Doppler radar failed actually at tropical storm intensity.
Oh, really?
And so we don't have any records of in terms for radar imagery and radar data. We don't have any records because it was destroyed in the storm. And that's
so. Wayne, was it a hurricane?
By Detroit, it looks like my bookcase.
Yeah. So Wayne, was it a hurricane that got you interested in weather, or what?
Yes, a hurricane in 1979 called Hurricane David. It came across my island, and back then, I don't know but now, but back then, our school always opened on the 1st of September. And every year there was always a hurricane that shut the school down. I loved hurricanes. So I was looking forward to them until I got into the Department of Meteorology. That was a different story. But I loved hurricane because the extra days, and we have coconut trees, and the hurricane always blew the coconuts down. So you didn't have to climb the trees to get. So I loved hurricanes, and I was fascinated by that, especially after a hurricane in 1979 called Hurricane David.
Yeah, a very famous hurricane that was followed by a very closely related Hurricane Frederick, which came into the Gulf of Mexico, which is very impactful here in Alabama. And James knows that storm because he was brand new to Birmingham television. And he had just started working at Channel 13, hadn't you, James?
Thought they were trying to get rid of me. I worked there one day. One day I'm there, and they said you're going to the Gulf Coast to cover a major hurricane. So, yeah.
Well, it didn't work, so they were stuck with you. But your live coverage there was very impressive because the other stations didn't send anybody down there, and there was a new meteorologist at one of the other stations, one of your competitors. Who stayed in Birmingham, and I thought your reports were compelling. Probably more, because I had all my life listened to WWL out of New Orleans whenever there was a hurricane affecting the northern Gulf Coast, because you got the best coverage. And I think Norman Robinson, James, is that the reporter's name, who was in Mobile also? And those reports and your reports were just compelling that night. That's the only night I ever lied to my boss. I was a senior in high school and had a job at Cinema City 8, the big movie theater out in Roebuck where we lived, and they called me into work that night. And there was no way under God's green earth that I was going to work on the night of that hurricane. So I told them I had a major science project that I was working on, and
You weren't lying.
And I wasn't lying because I stayed up all night until that radio station went off the air. And Wayne, we're now joined by Bruce Jones from Midland Weather Area, so I'll speed this up a little bit to what we would do normally later. That night and that next morning, especially, I was listening to JB Elliott here talking about that storm coming up through South Alabama on NOAA Weather Radio. Do you have any kind of similar communication system in the Bahamas, or is that something Bruce needs to work on?
I think that's a system that we don't have that, and I think that would be a good choice because I've listened to that on one of the hurricanes. I was trapped in the United States and in Florida at the time, and I think that's something that I like it for one, and it's good for tornadoes as well. But we're not impacted by tornadoes as much. But I know for hurricanes that would be excellent. We don't have a Norway weather radio type. We have we just issued a forecast, and then we have a recording of it on. You have to dial a number by telephone, and you can get recording of the weather. And every 6 hours they change it, but that's about it.
Yeah, James, you remember we used to have that in Birmingham, and it was, I think it ran like a minute or a minute 15 or something, but the weather service could switch it to be much shorter during active weather. And I used to wear that number out when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. Probably the first hurricane in my memory of doing that was Hurricane Agnes in 1972. Which came up into the Florida Panhandle, of course, caused a lot of flooding later. But I just saw a paper this week that was talking about the number of tornadoes that were associated with Hurricane Agnes in Florida, including some deadly tornadoes. Do you ever have tornadoes in the Bahamas, Wayne?
Yeah, we do. And in fact, the first recorded one that I know of with tornadoes was actually the storm I talked about, Hurricane David of 1979. That was the first documentary record of a tornado in a hurricane, and it occurred in New Providence, which is the island I'm living on now, actually. So, and several of the other storms. I think definitely Dorian definitely had some tornadoes. Unfortunately, with the Doppler radar being down, there's no way to officially confirm that.
Yeah. That tornado. I mean, all the destruction in the pictures in your book look like Cat 5 tornadoes. Every one of those in every one of those pictures. So that's amazing. Bruce Jones, hurricanes. We're coming up to hurricane season here. We appreciate your sponsorship of the show with Midland Radio. Of course, it's prime time for severe weather, but talk about NOAA Weather Radio and hurricanes, because it's an important communication tool all over the United States in hurricane impact zones.
Well, yeah, and especially so for the maritime community. Commercial shipping, commercial fishing. Yes. NOAA Weather Radio signals travel 60 to 80 miles out over water, and that's much, much farther than any cell phone signal will ever travel. Yeah. So You know, that transmitter in Chicago that's on top of the Willis Tower, which used to be the Sears Tower, that transmitter shoots a signal all the way across Lake Michigan over to Benton Harbor, Michigan. Yeah, that's a long ways across that water. So
that's a good distance.
Yeah. If we could get some NOAA weather radio transmitters, Wayne, for your country, that would be fantastic.
That'd be perfect. That'd be good.
Yeah, because you've got a lot of real estate to cover, and it's pretty spread out, isn't
it? Spread out, which is why we got because for a long while we had for radar coverage. Well, we covered by satellite, but for radar coverage, we had one radar which was in New Providence, and that only went as far as the central Bahamas, or not even half of the Bahamas was covered. So which was one of the major reasons why the government several years back acquired 5 radars, and because the coverage, the Bahamas is so vast, so a NOAA radio that would be perfect, especially for boaters, because a lot of our islands, there's a lot of islands and keys, and persons live on several of those islands, like Abaco. That's an area that has a lot of keys in it, and a lot of persons live on those keys. And it's difficult, it's expensive to get, let's say, telecommunications there like that they have on the mainland. So something like something that closes the gap in terms of like weather radio. I think that there's 1 or 2 ham operators in the Bahamas, but that's basically about it. Yeah,
so do you use a lot of FM radio for communications?
Yeah, we do, but the FM radio is only in the city, Nassau. Well, nowadays you have the internet, so you probably could get it on the internet, but getting those islands and keys connected by telephone or internet is very challenging and very expensive for the Bahamas.
Yeah.
I live in,
how many islands in the Bahamas?
700.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, when you look at the map, I mean, it covers a huge area and get it in the right spot here. But golly, it's a whole lot of water in there.
Yes, it's a lot.
And New Providence is one of the smaller islands.
Yes.
Where Nassau is.
Yeah, in fact, okay, for example, there's several islands that are impacted by hurricanes. There's all islands are impacted by hurricanes, but in terms of Grand Bahama, there's Grand Bahama, which was impacted by Dorian. Grand Bahama, Abaco, then Andros, those are always in the top 10 areas that are impacted by hurricanes on a yearly basis. Climatologically, they're always in the top 10. New Providence is rarely hit by a major hurricane or impact. I don't know, New Providence is normally like but 2 years ago was number 39. Now it's like number 52. So we rarely get impacted by storms. I don't know if it's the luck of the draw or it's just the small size of New Providence, but it's a combination of everything. It's just a matter of good luck, I guess.
I thought it was interesting. You said that you provided the forecasting services for the Turks and Caicos.
Yes, we do.
Are they a British territory?
Yeah, the British territory. Actually, when the Bahamas gained independence, and the Turks and Caicos were part of us until 1972. When the Bahamas gained independence, Turks and Caicos decided to remain with the British and stayed with them. To this day, they're still a British territory. So, but we still have to provide them with where they don't have a meteorological office down there as such. So as a forecast, we have to issue a daily terminal forecast. We have to issue 4 terminal forecasts a day, every day throughout the year. And the hurricane, we provide them with hurricane warnings for Turks and Caicos as well.
I thought it was interesting when the hurricane that recently, cyclone that broke the longevity record was bouncing back and forth between Madagascar and Mozambique.
Madagascar, yes.
I was fascinated when I went to the website for, I guess it was Madagascar.
Yes.
And it's the French Weather Service.
Yes.
For one of those islands or one of those countries. And they were on strike.
Yeah.
And the services were extremely abbreviated. So I thought that's going to be terrible if any of these other weather services ever figure out they can go on strike. So
unfortunately, I don't know about the US, but unfortunately the Bahamas, we can't strike as a weather office. We are what you consider mandatory service. So we can't strike. It's against the law for us to strike. If we strike, we go to jail.
There you go.
So we are mandatory. So we cannot be union. We cannot not unionize, but we cannot strike because we consider that's like the police officers. Same thing. The laws in the country for the police officers and the doctors and nurses, they can't strike either. Mind you, the union still find ways to get around that. Like you'll call in sick for a day, and that's enough chaos to get the attention of the politician.
Yeah, the blue flu. Well, James Mann says he's going to go on strike if I don't let him get to the recorded segments here. So James, to prevent that, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to have Tony Rice, and we're going to have Jen's This Week in Tornado History. We'll hear from Bruce Jones, maybe do a little email. We'll have picks of the week and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
If you missed Mercury in the lineup of planets a week or two back, this week actually offers a much better opportunity to catch a glimpse of this elusive planet. This first rock from the sun, it spends most of its time either lost in the glare of the sun or hiding behind it. But this week, it reaches its greatest elongation east, bringing it to the highest point above the evening western horizon. That higher altitude this week is particularly important because Mercury is also often difficult to see because it is lost behind the houses and trees that are visually blocking the horizon for most of us. Elongation, that's a measurement of separation between the sun and a planet. Eastern elongations have the planet visible in the evening sky. Western elongation puts it in the pre-dawn sky. And Tuesday, April 11th, that's the absolute best time to see Mercury as it starts to pop out about 15 degrees above the horizon, about 15 minutes after sunset local time. And it sets about an hour later. Now, if clouds spoil the fun on Tuesday, try again later in this week. It'll be just a little bit lower. Now, each of those time periods that the planets spend on the eastern or western side of the sun, from our vantage point here on Earth, they're called apparitions. And the cycle with Mercury goes about 2 weeks of an evening apparition. It's lost for about a month, and then 2 weeks of a morning apparition. We'll next see Mercury in the pre-dawn sky from May 22nd to June 12th. This rapid cycle happens because Mercury's year, or more accurate, its orbital period, is only 88 Earth days long. You see, it's speeding through space at 29 miles a second. Each day on Mercury, it lasts 59 Earth days, though. That's your astronomy outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
This week in tornado history, the Red River Valley tornado outbreak was one of the most significant outbreaks on record for this region. It occurred on April 10th, 1979. Per the Storm Prediction Center, 25 tornadoes occurred mainly in Texas and Oklahoma, with one lone tornado in the state of Kansas. 2 F4 tornadoes occurred during the outbreak. One hit the south side of Vernon, Texas, and the other struck Wichita Falls. The Wichita Falls tornado had a path length of almost 47 miles. It had a maximum width of close to 1 mile, and it reached that mile width as it entered the Faith Village neighborhood on the north side of Southwest Parkway. Most of the homes in this area were demolished. Tragically, 42 people lost their lives from this tornado event. 25 of the deaths were auto-related, and 16 of the 25 were people who entered their cars trying to evade the tornado. 11 of these 16 people left homes that were not even damaged. A total of 3,095 homes were destroyed in this event, and 600 were damaged. Over 1,700 injuries were reported. Ted Fujita surveyed the damage from this outbreak, and per the National Weather Service in Norman, he noted that the damage path of the Wichita Falls tornado was among the widest that he had ever seen. You can read about this event and hundreds more at tornadotalk.com. Calling all weather enthusiasts, join the AMS Weather Band and become part of the American Meteorological Society, whose members have been at the forefront of weather, water, and climate research for over 100 years. You'll get to go behind the scenes with the 10,000 plus scientists, broadcasters, educators, and researchers of the AMS. The AMS Weather Band brings together weather professionals and weather enthusiasts. Band members can grow their knowledge and appreciation of weather and climate by participating in virtual events, online discussions, Q&As, AMAs, webinars, photo contests, and more. AMS Weather Band gives you the opportunity to interact directly with those in the scientific community. Learn more and join the band today at amsweatherband.org.
We appreciate our friends at the American Meteorological Society, the Weather Band, for sponsoring the show. We also appreciate Midland Radio. not only for sponsoring the show, but for all the work they do in helping prepare communities across the United States. As one of the main providers of NOAA weather radios. Bruce, when Jen was talking about April 10th, 1979, that's a date that sticks out in my mind because, the next day, the Birmingham News had the picture of this, huge wedge tornado going through Wichita Falls. And that just, resonated with me as a kid. So did we have NOAA weather radio in Wichita Falls in 1979?
Yeah, we had, there were just a couple hundred transmitters nationwide back then, maybe 250 or so, maybe 300 transmitters back then. Not a whole lot of them. So there's still a lot of empty spots around the country. And it was the, kind of the weather alert thing where, you kind of had to have the weather radio on, but I think we had some of the early weather alert radios out at that point in time, but it was long before SAME where you could tell it just to go off for the county that you're in.
I think I got it for about 37 counties in Alabama, but I didn't mind hearing them all.
I didn't either. I love listening to it. And I had one that I had under my pillow in my bedroom that I'd go to bed at night listening to.
That must be a genetic defect we have.
I think it is. Yeah, it's just it's like people who listen to police scanners. You just hate to pull yourself away from all the action and activity.
Well, that's about, I have a scanner app that I think that's about the fastest way I receive breaking news information, when the shooting or the alleged shooting that happened at the University of Oklahoma the other night. That was my first notification to go to another news source when that channel, Canadian County, started to peak. I got a notification and, went there and found out. But, we all grew up. I think probably the 1956 James Spann McDonald's Chapel, that tornado that came across the northern and western parts of the Birmingham metro area probably influenced my grandmother to be as afraid of severe weather as she was. And she imparted a lot of that to me. So, Bruce, I thanked my lucky stars in 1976 when we got ours in Birmingham. It came in November, and I thought I died, gone to heaven. I'll tell you what. And there's still one right here and one upstairs by my bed right now that, are there. That was my first notification, even though I'd just gotten off WeatherBrains of that January tornado that hit Fultondale. It was my birthday, and we were having a little mini birthday party. And, I was away from my phone, and I might have missed that warning without that information. So it is a critical part of the life-saving process.
Just today at work, I mentioned to someone about the hotel down in Birmingham that had the NOAA weather radio in the hotel office, and luckily they got everybody down to the first floor before the top floor got peeled off by that direct hit on that tornado. So there are so many success stories like this, and if you're a fan of WeatherBrains, we do ask that you become I don't know. It's almost like we want you to be a good old time Baptist minister and go out there and just ring the bell about NOAA weather radio, because it's a system that really works very, very well. These transmitters, 1,033 transmitters nationwide, provide instantaneous alerts to people. And the devices act a lot like a smoke detector. They're plugged in, they're always on, they've got battery backup in case there's a power failure. And they were truly designed to be indoor tornado sirens. So we do ask that you spread the word about the importance of the NOAA Weather Radio Network. And to help you do so, there's a special offer for WeatherBrains fans like you. If you use the promo code SPANN25, that's SPANN25, SPANN25. SPAN25 is the promo code you use when you go to midlandusa.com. That's Midland, like the middle of the country, midlandusa.com. Use the promo code SPAN25 and you get 25% off a weather radio. We have emergency crank radios that are good for hurricane zones where you may be without power for several days and need to generate your own electricity to keep that radio going. We also have the desktop models where you can tell it, I only live in this county and I only want to receive warnings for this county. And we've got partial county alerting that's coming this year. So we'll be able to partition these counties into even smaller segments and get more granular, as they say. with the tornado warnings and severe weather warnings. So the promo code is SPAN25, SPANN25. You use that at midlandusa.com. We invite you to take advantage of that. But most importantly, I invite you to become an advocate for the NOAA Weather Radio Network. It's the official voice of our National Weather Service.
Indeed. And we're doing our weather radio programming tour across the state. We have one this Thursday in Northport, and the crowds have been just great. Very encouraging to see. But right now, let's shift gears. Just maybe, we might have a little email this week.
All righty. Yeah, we have two, and I'm hoping Wayne can help with this one. It's actually hurricane related from our friend James Lewis. Now that the Hurricane Ian tropical cyclone report has been released, the landfall pressure has been adjusted to the 941 millibars, making the landfall pressure and max sustained winds identical to Hurricane Charlie of 2004. However, Ian had far greater radii of hurricane force, tropical storm force, and maximum winds extending out twice as far as Charlie. With all this in mind, the question I have is what sort of factors allow two systems at nearly identical latitudes with nearly identical central pressures, max winds, to have such vastly different sizes? Is it the surrounding environment at play, or is it something internal to the hurricane itself?
Well, I think that's a combination of both. I think the environment, well, no two environments are the same. So there's always going to be a difference in terms of, for example, the sea surface temperature might be a little warmer in one than the next. Location as well be another factor. One might have more moisture than the next one might have. And so it could, I guess it could be a combination of all of the various factors that enhances hurricane formation and in terms of formation of hurricanes.
Thanks, Wayne. Yeah, I think all of us were just sitting there in awe of watching that come in, just like Charlie did. It was really tragic. Another email that we got from Michael Hansen. This is a very interesting tweet from our friends at the National Weather Service in Billings, Montana. And this was from April 7th. Today's the day many of you have been waiting for. Billings should reach 57 degrees today. So that's pretty awesome. They were celebrating that. It's been so long since that happened. You may be wondering what significance the number 57 has. Well, here you go. And I love it when the Weather Service gets cute with their tweets. There's Heinz 57, Passenger 57, the age of actor Ben Stiller, the atomic number of lanthanum. 57 degrees Celsius is the world's hottest recorded temperature in Death Valley. Wow. And 57 degrees Fahrenheit is the temperature Billings should reach today for the first time since November 2nd, snapping a streak of 155 days. So good job, Billings. We're proud of you. That's an awesome tweet. So thank you, Michael, for sending that. Thank you for your emails, everybody. Please send those along. Email at weatherbrains.com. Sign up for our newsletter, too, so you can get our wonderful articles and history that Bill does every week. It's really been just fun to put that together. So sign up for that. You can go to our website and click the little newsletter link and get that in your email box every Thursday. Back to you, James.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
So let's do a little weather roundup here, and let's start with Wayne. Wayne, what was your high today? What's the weather like in the Bahamas right now?
Well, right now we just had a thunderstorm. We have a stall front that's just sort of Nassau, New Providence. So it's been raining the entire day. Well, that's a good thing because I have a little garden, so my garden is happy. But that's for Nassau. But in the rest of the Southeast Islands, they're pretty windy. It's windy and cool. But here it's windy, very windy now. Actually, the winds are up to 22 miles per hour.
You know, I need to get back down to the Nassau. The last time I was there was the summer of 1981.
Oh, you need a trip, bud.
Which was the year that we were married, that we went there in our honeymoon to Nassau, and it was great. We had the people were so nice. It was an incredible time.
But come on back.
I've not been to the Bahamas since 1981. How embarrassing is that? I need to get
that's
back.
really embarrassing.
That's bad.
Yeah, that's real bad. You need to come.
We're coming in March of 2025.
Yeah, we're gonna do the show down there in March of 2025. We need to do the 100 or the 1000th show down there. Show number 1000.
Okay, yes, that sounds good. I'll make sure I take care of you.
Yes,
I'll be there if I'm alive.
The WeatherBrains bounce. I just looked on the Hilton website. I looked at Hilton Resorts World Bimini, and I picked out a date in December. And I thought I'll come back and get it in a few minutes, and it went up $200 while the show was going on. So it's that WeatherBrains bounce right there.
All right, so let's go to our other low latitude friend, Troy. Troy, what's happening in Austin today?
Really, the last week or so, we started out the month. I think it was very warm. We started out temperatures at Camp Mabry and at Austin Bergstrom International Airport. Temperatures for the month, first few days, just a few days, were as much as 10 degrees above normal. And we got this cool spell and the rain last week, which we got an inch or two of rainfall around. And actually yesterday, or effective actually on Saturday, the averages for the month we're not even halfway through yet, but the averages finally fell below average in Austin. Highs last week in the 60s, lows in the around 50. And we were stuck there for a couple of days with the clouds around. And you know what? I enjoyed every minute of it. I loved it.
Yeah.
It was nice and cool and wet. We needed that, but it looks like maybe some showers, thunderstorms. I think we need to kind of watch the weather pattern across Texas and areas eastward by the time we get to the end of the week and into next weekend. Let's keep an eye out for thunderstorms. But it's a quiet night in Austin right now. Outside my office, it's 62.6 degrees.
Very pleasant. All right, James ate a lot. Those showers going to make it to Tulsa town tonight?
No, they actually stopped about 10 miles west of downtown and are spitting the bit right now. So we had a remarkable Easter weekend, and this week is going to be remarkable, like mid to upper 70s, fairly low humidity. It's unbelievable. We'll pay the price for it. And part of that, every oak tree in eastern Oklahoma, I think, spit out its pollen at the same time this weekend. So antihistamine sales are through the roof. I'm kind of mainlining it about as fast as I do coffee right now.
Goodness, I understand that. All right, Jen, how cold is it up there?
It's 52 right now. I am loving this. Yeah, it's fantastic here. We're firmly in the ridge, and our average high is about 62, and we're around 66 today, and they're going to continue to go up. I think we'll peak around 75 Thursday and Friday. We're going to stay dry straight through Friday night, and then we get some showers that move in, and then we start going the other way with our temperatures by the weekend and into early next week. But I'm loving it. It's one of those periods where you just open up all the windows and just air out the house, and it just smells so good. So doing great up here. And this type of period is great for radio too, because it gives us a break. The forecast can be so difficult to try to fit into 25 seconds what you're trying to say for storms. But this is a breeze. So I'm liking the little break here.
Now let's go north of Tulsa up to Bruce. Bruce up in the heartland. What's happening up there?
We had some severe thunderstorm warnings around the Kansas City metro today. Some very slow moving storms kind of moved up from Wichita. Early morning, they were down around Wichita, and then they made it up to Kansas City around 10 o'clock or so with some 1-inch hail reports and up to 2 inches of rain in a few locations. And that was nice to have here. We're slightly dry here, but boy, it's western Kansas where they really need rainfall. Those poor folks out there. One of our guys at work, he owns land out in western Kansas, and he said he picked up a handful of dust off the ground. It was nothing but dust. So we hope and pray that the folks in western Kansas get some rain.
Yeah, get that dust settled for sure. And Bill Murray, I'm seeing all these headlines: rare April tropical storm, hurricane to come up and create heavy rain for the deep south. Oh, please.
Sensationalism. Yep.
No, brother.
Gosh. It's got a long way to go before it's going to get it. I was trying to think what the A storm was. I guess I should have looked at your pick, James Spann, because it would have told me if this one could achieve subtropical characteristics by some amazing stretch of the imagination. So I'll have to look over there and not only know what it is, but how to pronounce it. Just a minute, stealing some of your thunder. Picks of the week. Well, first, Jim Minnick is with us next week, and I left the book upstairs but he's got a book called Without Warning. Jen will know the exact year. Udall, Kansas, bet James A will too. Bet Troy does too. What year?
1955.
Yeah.
Oh, and Bruce Jones would know too, of course.
Excellent.
I tell you, I've only read the first chapter, but already out of the gate, it's fascinating. We're 2 for 2 in these 2 weeks with great books from great authors. And I can already tell it's going to be fabulous. Can't wait to talk to Jim Minnick last week. And many thanks to Wayne Neely for joining us tonight. I know you're busy, Wayne, and to take 2 hours out of your time is a big commitment and investment. We appreciate you spending it with us.
My pleasure.
And my pick of the week. Oh, I'm sorry, James.
I was going to say, yeah, let's morph into picks of the week. Go, Bill. Go.
Yeah, and my pick of the week is for the city of Longmont, Colorado. Rebecca Morse, our friend who's been on the show before, is going to be talking about communicating hurricane risks. And so there's a free webinar that's available on the web. That event is going to be, I'd signed up for it and everything, April the 13th. So that's coming up this Thursday night, 7:00 Mountain Time, free registration. I'll have the link on the website. Go check it out. And I had a last minute pick too, because I thought this was interesting. I love the magazine Wired, so I'm always looking out for, articles that are in Wired. And one of our friends from the show, Walker Ashley, who's of course at Northern Illinois University, and Elle just brought me the book. There's the book right there, The Tornado of Udall, Kansas. So that's a fabulous choice right there. But Walker has an article where he's quoted in Wired magazine talking about the shifting tornado alley. That's a great story. So if you get a chance, go and read that. And of course, be ready next week to listen to Jim Minnick. And so, Jen, I'm going to want you to come in there with lots of questions about tornado history.
Yeah, I got the book a couple of weeks ago, so I'm going to try to read through that. So I'll be ready for that.
All right. So, Jen, while you got the horn there, Jen, what's
Sure.
your pick of the week?
Well, on this day in 2009, there was a substantial tornado outbreak on this day, and that included the strongest of the day and the most deadliest was in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. But there was also a tornado that occurred in Alabama. It was an EF3, and it went across Lake Gunnersville. And we have a summary that my 2 main writers put together. They really did a fantastic job. It's the Preston Island, South Saucy, Powell, Sylvania EF3 tornado. And so they went through it and analyzed it and told some personal stories. So that is my pick. It's the link to that. So check that out. It's a good read.
Awesome. All right, James, ate a lot before you get on the air for Action News at 9. What's your pick of the week?
All the action. Hey, mine is a webpage that Rick's crew at National Weather Service Norman put together on the Red River outbreak in 1979. It's a fantastic summary, radar pictures, satellite, all kinds of accounts of that. And I remember when those storms made it up to Tulsa as a little kid. Bruce will appreciate this too. My parents actually let me sleep on their floor because I was so scared of the storms, and I was huddled down there with a little weather radio, and I wouldn't put it on alert. I just listened to it. And I think at some point my dad finally said, no, you got to sleep at some point. But yeah, it was going and blowing big time when those storms made it to Tulsa. Thankfully, nothing like what had happened in the Red River Valley.
And about a week after that, we had catastrophic river flooding in Alabama.
Yeah.
I will never, ever forget that situation. It was just a rough month. But Bruce, let's bounce it up to you. Bruce, what's your pick of the week? Go.
Martin Gardner used to be the math games editor of the Scientific American magazine for many years. And he created a fictional character called Dr. Matrix, which was a bit of a con man about numerology. Well, there's a site called Ask Dr. Matrix, and you type in 2 different numbers, 2 whatever numbers, and it'll give you all the weird connections between those 2 numbers so you can amaze your friends and dazzle your enemies at the same time. But the site's called Ask Dr. Matrix, and I will send out the link to you. It's a fun little thing to do.
Awesome. Sounds like a good time suck. I like that.
It is.
All right,
yeah.
Troy Kimmel, what you got? Go.
Got a plug for, and this is something we've been working on for a year, and it got slowed down, like Wayne was mentioning, everything else because of COVID in the process. But University of Texas in our emergency management area on campus, in combination with academics, the Jackson School of Geosciences at the university, and also our Department of Geography and the Environment Department, which I teach, We finally got our friends Ed Mansouri and folks at WeatherStem. We have a brand new weather station at the University of Texas now. It's been in for a couple of weeks, and I've passed along the link to that. I will tell you, you have to go through a little hoop or two to look at the video or the images, but it's one of the best views of the city of Austin, the UT skyline you will find anywhere. It's on the east part of campus, looking across the interstate at downtown and the campus, a weather station as well. Just want to thank the people at WeatherStem. They do a lot of good work and really a lot of good weather cameras and weather equipment out there as well. So my pick of the week this week, WeatherStem.
Excellent.
Hey,
All right,
Troy,
Wayne,
you're renting out your extra bedroom there for the eclipse next year?
I bet a lot of stuff, online about that, particularly in Texas as of late. We'll see. That's
Save it
monetize, Bill. Monetize.
Yeah, monetize. So yeah. Wayne, we've stalled long enough. Wayne, give us a good pick, something weather related. Go.
Well, weather related. I'm looking forward to the hurricane season, and that basically about it, and see what's going to happen. I'm keep my fingers crossed that the Bahamas doesn't be impacted by any significant storms.
So people want to come to your website to see your data. What's the URL?
Well, I have a Facebook page, WayneNeely.com, and NASA Weather Live, and Wayne Neely on Facebook as well, and Instagram.
Okay, awesome. And we'll make that your pick of the week. And mine was the new NHC pronunciation guide for the hurricane names. Yeah. I was going to say a secondary pick on the weather band, the AMS weather band that's part of our show. One that I would like to kind of be a fly on the wall is the Breezy versus the Bachelor, the March 2 to 3rd, 2020 tornado outbreak. Meteorologist Danielle Breezy shares the inside story of how they covered the deadly tornado outbreak on March 2nd, 2020, interrupting The Bachelor in prime time, dealing with hate, anger, and rage. While at the same time covering a tornado outbreak. I have been there. I have been there many times. But hey, looking at the clock on the wall, we got to tie this one up here, wrap it up. Thanks a lot to all of our regulars. And Wayne, thanks for being on the show. It's been a fun one this week. If you want to get in touch with us, our email address, it is email@weatherbrains.com. And if you're new, you can watch this live. We stream it live Monday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central on our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/weatherbrains. But we know that most of you listen. And again, the email address, it is email@weatherbrains.com. On behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, thanks for listening. Have a great week and God bless. Great shoe.
A lot more fun than being at Hooters, James.
Yeah. There you go. All right. Wayne, thank you. It was great.
Yep.